Greetings, YouTube. Fall in New England. It's a balmy 64 degrees in here. I guess we'll be turning on the heat shortly in my apartment. My entire life, I have been fascinated by things aquatic. Films, comics, role-playing game, supplements, or settings. If it had to do with the oceans, I found it fascinating. Rather ironically, I have a deep and abiding fear of swimming in water when I can't see what's underneath me. But I'm not alone in that, I imagine. But one of the things I loved the most, I think, as a kid, that dealt with the world aquatic, was The Incredible Mr. Limpet, a film that came out a year before I was born and starred the wonderful Don Knotts. And I was a major Don Knotts fan when I was a kid. Because of this film. That was my gateway Don Knotts introduction. And I went on to enjoying any number of other films that he did. He did quite a few Disney-type films. Family-oriented stuff. I never liked his work on Three's Company, just mostly because I never really liked that series a whole lot. But Mr. Limpet was a gem. It was a wonderfully magical, literally, film to my childhood eyes. The idea that here in the real world, you weren't happy with who you were. Sound familiar? And you could dream of something different, something that you thought was better. And for Mr. Limpet, that something better was a fish. I often wondered how in the film he had acquired his rather boisterous and bombastic wife, because she didn't seem like a good match for Mr. Limpet. But maybe opposites really do attract. I can't imagine that anyone hasn't seen or heard of this film, but in case you haven't, essentially Mr. Limpet is a timid man, does accounting, and wishes that he was something better. He was a hero, that he could help the world, and he wasn't Mr. Limpet. He likes fish a lot. One day he falls into the ocean and gets his wish. He becomes a fish. I feel very Seussian at the moment. And that's where our story really kicks off. The animation, I have to admit, seems a little dated. It isn't bad. I think the best scene in the film as far as animation is concerned is a scene with an octopus, and I think the octopus was really well done. I had really strong memories of that as a kid, and as seeing it recently, I think it's done really well. I realize that modern animation is going to look better than the stuff that was done in this film, but this stuff is still good, and I think that it's still going to be appreciated by its target audience, which really is children. I never really noticed that the time scales in this film are a little strange, because the film opens just before we enter World War II, before the attack on Pearl Harbor. And the attack on Pearl Harbor takes place just after Mr. Limpet has made his transformation into a fish. He hears it in a boat when someone's playing a radio. And very shortly, at least in the time scale of the film, very shortly later, it's almost D-Day. And that intervening time span, between 1941 and D-Day, isn't well represented in the movie. To me, it seemed like there was days of difference, not years. And that's really what it was. It was years before we got up and running, and seriously thought we had a success in invading Europe. And the storyline is going to be a little dated for people kids who will have no idea who Nazis are. But they're presented in a very kind of a whitewashed manner, and they're just the bad guys. They're the people that are trying to hurt the good guys. So in that respect, the children will accept them for who and what they are, the bad guys. They're about as deep as the shark in the film that is a threat to Mr. Limpet. This particular DVD here has an introduction by Don Knotts. There's not a full-length commentary track, which would have been wonderful. I would have really enjoyed that. But he does do an intro. straight to the camera, talking about the film, his memories, how it's become a perennial favorite, and how he's happy about that fact. And it was nice that he got a chance to speak about this film because it was important to my growing up, and I imagine it was important to a lot of people. There are also some other like theatrical trailer on here, and a number of other aspects about the film, like a vintage documentary that dealt with it, things like that. I haven't had a chance to look at those yet. But this is a really good kids film. I highly recommend it for anyone who has children. I think that it's entertaining. I, as an adult, still enjoyed it. I freely admit that my enjoyment of that is significantly shaded by my love of it as a child. But to me, it's magical. I know I used that word already, but it is. It represents a time in my youth when this film could just transport me away. I could just immerse myself, if you'll pardon the pun, into this film and escape. So anyone who enjoys decent, light family entertainment, I highly recommend The Incredible Mr. Limpet.